Okay. We're holding Peches Amud Aleph by the Mishnah. Revius Mahayim Shemeshes. Is that correct? It looks like. Okay, we thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah today. Discuss about learning Hashem the basic English. Now, I don't know what my schedule is going to be like this week. If I'm going to be able to do the 7:30, or if I'm going to have to go back to the 5:30. So I'll let's see. Let's see if it's is it flexible for everyone? In the basic English, it's flexible.
Anytime you want.
Yeah, I'll do my best too.
Okay.
This point.
Okay, so then let's stay. Tomorrow, let's do 7:30. All right, and then after that, I'll let you know. The default is 7:30, but I may have to switch it to 5:30.
Okay.
Okay. So if I'll send out a message, so I'll put it on the 5:30. Okay. Revius Maya Mishemeshes. We spoke about the different types of measurements that were in the base of Mikdash, and one of them was Revius Lug. Right? We had a Revius Ahin, and then we had a Revius Lug. The Revius Lug we said would be like a classical Revius. Now, which one are we talking about here? It says Revius. Does it say with the Revius Hin or Revius Lug? Yes, that's not so helpful.
Do we have a conclusion of people that call measurements without measurements, or
Maybe. Now, remind me if that had a significance. It was up or down.
I think if they started with the biggest measurement and divided it, it would be more accurate. And if they went up,
So there'd be little bits extras. And that we said was a machlaikas. I don't know if they usually we don't paskin on machlaikas unless it's relevant, right? Yeah. If it's not relevant, then the Gemara would ask a question. Say, when Mashiach comes, you'll let us know. Usually that's what it says. Okay, let's see. We'll figure it out. So Revius Mayim, what would the Revius be used for? It says Revius Mayim L'Metzora. This was the first thing is Revius Mayim for the Metzora. It says they would shech the Metzora, the leopard, not leopard, the leper, right? The Metzora would have to part of his purification process would slaughter a bird over a cup of water, and the blood would go into the water. So. So how much water was there? We said it's a Revius. Another thing that the Revius was used for, Revius Shemen L'Nazir. Oh, so it's obviously Revius Halug. The Revius Shemen for the Nazir. Let's see what the pasuk says. Yikravav Tesvav. Nazir had to bring chalas as well. And together with this chalas, he brought with the flour was oil. This is Vav. That's Vav. Says, that's not what this Vav. Doesn't make sense. Let's try that. No, because the Nazir is going to be in Midbar. Let's try by Midbar. 6:15. Let's try that one. Yeah, they made a mistake. Chales matzos chales belulis b'shemen or kikim matzos meshuchim b'shemen min chasam and eskayim. So this is the nazir he brings when he's becoming purified. He brings a lamb for an ayla. He brings another lamb for a male lamb for an ayla. He brings a female lamb for a chatas, and he brings a ram for a shlamim, and then he brings a basket of matzos. It's chalis belulis b'shemen or kikim matzos meshuchim b'shemen. So it's mixed with oil and smeared with oil. So how much oil was there? You say it's a revius.
Is there another reviews?
Oh, it could be a revius a him. Right? Revius means a quarter. Yeah. It's a quarter, either a quarter of a lug or a quarter of a hin. It's a huge difference. But now the next measurement is chatzi lug, which means that we're moving up. We're from a revius a lug now to a chatzi lug. It's not a lot of oil. Chatzi lug mayim mishamish. What is the chatzi lug used for? There's chatzi lug mayim l'saita. The chatzi lug was used for the water of the saita. What was the saita water? To erase the parchment, the name of Hashem in the parchment. Chatzi lug shemen l'taida. Also, they used the chatzi lug for the oil for the taida. We're going to see the carbon taida came along with 40 loaves. We're going to see where did this oil? How was this divided amongst the 40? A regular lug that would have been every mincha. Every mincha that was one isaran came with the lug. One isaran, which is 43 eggs, came with the lug, which is 6 eggs of oil. Does that make sense? 43 eggs. How many ounces is that? Let's just put it like that. Let's say 43 ounces. It's really double that. It's really 86 ounces of flour would be 12 ounces of oil. And it's not a lot. It's a very thick dough. If it was a mincha of 60 isarin, this first Tana holds that you would add 60 lug. So in other words, every isarin got 1 lug. That was the ratio. But how does it work? 6 to 43. What's that?
Doesn't go even.
7. So it's about 1 to 7. Yeah, 1 to 7. Rabbi ben Yaakov says, even if there's 60 sarin, you only put in 1 lug. This is really a dry mixture, right? It's only 1 lug for 60. That's 420 times like the ratio. So okay, that means every mincha was always the set amount of oil. Doesn't matter how big the mincha was, according to Rabbi ben Yaakov. Okay. Shenemar, he quotes a pasuk. The pasuk is la mincha v'loig shemen. It says for the mincha and the lug. That means every mincha is going to have 1 lug. Shisha lapar. There's 6 lug for a par. The reason why we say 6 lug for a par is that's a chatzi hin, half a hin. For arbala ayil, there's 4 paras of bull. There's 4 lug for a ram, and that with 4 lug would be. Good morning.
Chase.
The 4 lug would be a third of a hin. And then shleisha lakeves, 3 lug for a sheep, which is a quarter of a hin. Shleisha umechza lemenaira, 3.5 would go to the menaira. How would that work? That's chatzi lug l'chol ner. There would be a half a lug for every candle. There were 7 candles in the menaira, so that would equal to 3.5 because he put a half in each one, right? No, 7. Shamash is a Hanukkah invention. It's in an eight. It's in an 8 menorah. This is the 7 menorah. It doesn't have a shamash. Yosef Rebbe V'Kashalei. Rebbe was sitting. He had the following question. Revius Lama Nimshacha. This is a very interesting question that he's asking. Somehow he knows that the measuring cupper of a Revius was anointed with oil by Moshe Rabbeinu. And he's asking, what was the purpose of that? Why did Moshe Rabbeinu need to anoint it? If it was for the Mitzayra, we said that they needed a lug for the Mitzayra one, for the shech the bird over that water, right? Shech the bird over the water, and the blood would spill into the water. It says Gutsu, that didn't need to be consecrated. That was bachutz. That was outside the. Done outside the temple, right? The mitzvah at that point was still impure. It wasn't even in the courtyard. Rashi says it was by the Shar Nikanor. I thought it was outside the camps. Yeah, what's Rashi say? What's? It's a funny Rashi. No, the Rashi. That's crazy. There's two Rashis here. There's the printed Rashi, and then there's the Ksav Yad. This Rashi over here must be in the wrong place because it's the Rashi from the Ksav Yad said it was Michutz Lamachana. It was outside the camp. The Rashi on the top says it was at the entrance to the courtyard. That's very different. Michutz Lamachana and entrance to the courtyard. Nicanor. Is that where this was done, by the gates of Nicanor?
He says there's two parts. Starts at the gates of Nicanor. And then he says only when he brings the sacrifices on the 8th and final day of the purification. He starts off saying.
No, it takes place outside the city, is what Rashi says. Only later. Okay, good. So that's the question. That's what I'm asking. Okay.
So was it two parts or just
no,
one part?
There's a problem over here. There's a problem over here. There's a Rashi that they discovered from on the note in the Meshita Mekubetzes. The Meshita Mekubetzes found a manuscript of Rashi, published it. So it got put into the bottom of the Gemara. Then there's the Rashi that we thought was Rashi. We put it here, and he says, "Oh no, this is not Rashi. This is someone else. We don't know who this is. This maybe a student or whoever." But anyway, in the actual Rashi, the one that the Shita Mekubetzes found from the manuscript, there it says that this was done outside the city. Chutz Lamachne, outside the city. In the printed version of Rashi, it says it was by the gates of Nicanor. So they're asking, like, what's going on? So that wasn't done by the gates of Nicanor. Okay. Be Nazir. We said also that the Revius was used for the oil for the Nazir's lobe, right? He had two sets of, he had Chalis and Rakikin. It says, 1 second. Nazir b'shchitas ayalu the Kaddish. Nazir becomes the breads of the Nazir don't become consecrated by putting the oil into a vessel. Become consecrated by slaughtering the ram, right? The El Nazir. So, what was the purpose of consecrating the Chatzi Lug? I'm sorry, the Revius Lug. Rab Chia says Shabahi Amaydid Lachavita Kain Gadol Revius Shemen Kol Chala B'Chala. So. There were 12 Revius. He had 12 Revius, 6 in the morning and 6 in the afternoon, because he had 6 loaves. Let's see how this is. Yeah, 6 loaves were in the morning, and that would have been a lug and a half. And a lug and a half is a lug and a half. Each one is a lug is 4 revius, right? Because 4 quarters plus another 2 would mean 6. There's 6 loaves in the morning, yeah? Lug and a half. So it's 3 lugin. It's good.
No, it's very. But in the cases that it don't get bread or come with the animal, the shkita is one that I would say. And then the one that doesn't have an animal, that's what we're concentrating.
Right. Yeah. Or the kmitza. The vessel. Probably the vessel. Okay, so this is Reb Chia's answer. Reb Chia's answer is it's not the Mitzayra, it's not the Nazar, it's the Chaviti Kain Gadol. And there was a revius for each of the loaves that were brought, because he brought 12 loaves, 6 in the morning, 6 at night, so there was a revius for each one. What would a revius for each one be if there were 12? That would be a total of not 1.5 lug, but 3 lug. 3 lug would equal 12 revius. Okay, so Rebbe says about this. Oh, Kari Alei, he says about Reb Chia, Me'eretz Merchak Ish Atzasi. It's a quote from a pasuk somewhere in Yeshaya. It says, "From a distant place comes the man that gives me counsel." It means Reb Chia came from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara tells us that Sha'ala Reb Chia Banav, the Gemara Sukkah talks about Chia and his sons. They came up from Bavel. Okay. Chatzi lug mayim mashamish. What was the purpose of the chatzi lug? There was one of the measurements in the base of English was a half a lug. Yosef Rebbe v'kakashale. Rebbe was sitting and he had the following question: Chatzi lug lama nimshach. We said in the Mishnah that what was the chatzi lug used for? It was for the saita water and also the shemen of the taida. Remember when we finished Masech the saita, Yitzi gave us a bottle of sota water. Everyone was afraid to drink it, afraid they're going to blow up. So anyway, and a chatzi lug of the taida, of the oil for the loaves of the taida. So
Can I say something? It's interesting with Rebbe's comment on Reb Chia, because he's complimenting him. He says, "A man of my counsel," and yet Reb Chia was his student.
Right.
And it's very rare you see the Rebbe complimenting the student that's learning from the student, even though we say the saying, more from my students than I learned. I think it's just worth remembering.
Right. That was always Rabbi Yirmiyah that said that. That was Rabbi Yirmiyah's opinion. Yeah. He said Hillel said he thought people from Babylon weren't so intelligent.
No.
So I said that was Rabbi Yirmiyah's comment. Because Rabbi Yirmiyah left Babel, right? He would went to Eretz Yisrael, and he would comment back about his Babylonian. I think the Gemara that says, "Oh, because they sit in dark places, they say dark things." They say, remember all of those comments. The foolish people from Bavel, they eat bread with bread. I think all of that is Rabbi Yirmiyah. Like a bread sandwich. Like he didn't like, there was like some sort of oatmeal sandwich or something. They thought there was like 2 types of bread being. Those things was, it's interesting. Some people say, "Oh, the Gemara says." What do you mean the Gemara says? In the Gemara, you have Rabbi Yirmiyah, you have Rabbi Zera, you have all these opinions. It's not like the Gemara. It's like Americans think. Lahavdil. The Americans. Okay. Yosef Rebbe v'kakashli chatzi lug lama nimshach. So what was this for? Why was it anointed? So isaita, if it was for the saita water, was the water starting off chulin, but now that you needed to consecrate it? In other words, it came from the kiyar. It says Maim Kedoshim Ksiv. It says it was holy water. So I don't need a vessel of a specific size to consecrate it. It was already holy. So it must be. Taida must be for the taida. Lachmi taida v'shchitas taida the kedusha. But the breads became holy with the with the shechita, right? With the slaughtering of the sacrifice. Amalei Reb Shimon Berebi. Reb Shimon Berebi answers Rebbe. Shabaya mechalak chatzilug shem l'chol ner. No, they would use a chatzilug for each candle of the candelabra. Amar Loi. So Rebbe says about him, Ner Yisrael kachaya. Ner Yisrael, he calls him. The light of Israel. That's Yataka, right? That's the pshat. Second time that Rebbe compliments on this page. So remember this page.
First student.
This is the son, no?
It's the son. First it's student, now it's a son. Amar Rabbi Yechanan.
Wait, was it a son or a student?
The first one was Rabbi Chia, the second one is the son. Do you think it's better to get a compliment from a father than from a teacher? I don't know. Taisus mentions that there's a specific reason why he calls him Ner Yisrael here, because he's talking about the light of the menorah. So that's the term. The compliment is coming from that. Amar Rabbi Yechon says, Amar Rebbe. It says in the name of Rebbe, Ner Shekavsa, if the candle goes out, they would light the menorah in the evening. And then it would burn an entire night. If it would go out, Nidashan Hashemen, Nidashan Apsila. You would have to take out not just the wick.
I thought Rebbe's son is Rabban Gamliel.
Yeah, two sons.
Oh, I forgot about the other one.
Yeah. Reb Shimon bar Rebbe, Reb Gamliel bar Rebbe.
Because we don't hear much from Reb
No,
Shimon.
I actually, in Pirkei Avos, does it go to that? Is there a siddur? And it starts off with Rebbe Yomer, second chapter.
I'm sorry, second chapter we're not doing till next week.
Which is this week. You have a siddur in there? And then I think afterwards it mentions Reb Shimon.
You know, one time this doesn't help you is on Tfilas of Shabbos.
Yeah. You have a siddur in there? Okay. So if the candle goes out, so then you have to relight it. But how do you relight it? So you have to take out the wick, and you also have to take out the oil. I wouldn't do that. If it would be in my house, I would just put in a new wick. Just put in a new wick. I mean, the wick usually falls in when it goes out, so that's not going to work. So you put in a new wick. But here we're saying you have to redo the either one. So it starts with this chapter starts with Rebbe, then it goes to Rabban Gamliel, and then it says Rabban Gamliel b'nai shel Rabbi Nasi. It has a bunch of Hoya Aimers. Then it jumps to Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai. It doesn't give us a Rabbi Shimon. Oh no, it goes to Hillel, then it goes back to Hillel. It goes back to Hillel. It goes back to Hillel.
Wasn't there Rav Shimon East Shareda in Pirkei Avos? I mean, yeah, I'm saying, I remember.
That's where Yossi ben Yezer is Shareda. It's Shimon ben Shatta.
What he said.
You should interrogate the witnesses.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Leo.
We learned all about that. Interrogation.
Oh, yeah. So you have to also redo the oil. How do you do it? You clean it out, you put in new oil, and then you light it again. Yosef Rabbi Zrika v'kami bayile. Rabbi Zrika was sitting, or maybe it's just Rabbi. Let's see. There's a note over here. Reb Zera, it's supposed to be. Reb Zera. And he asked the following question. Beautiful question. How much oil do you put in? Put in the original amount again, because it went down in the middle of the night. Or do you just put in the ratio proportionate of how much more you need it to burn? Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Shita, the Kamida Rishayna. Obviously, it's like the first one. The Kamasha Chasra, because if it's the ratio proportionate to what you to what's left, Mina Yadin and my Chaser. How should we know how much is missing? I have a simple teretz. You look at the cup, you see how much time, and you divide it. Half the night would be half the cup, right? A quarter of the night would be a quarter of the cup. Maybe, yeah, you can look to if the wicks were all the same thickness. If you would do that, sheva midas. You only have 7 measurements in the base of Mikdash. Nafid midas tuva. You're going to have many types of measurements if you have to measure, because apparently it was measured before they would put it in. Right? We were saying that it was consecrated in the vessel before it was put into the menorah. Right? That was the reason why we had to consecrate it. So if they had to consecrate it, the oil, before it was put into the menorah, then you would need a special measuring cup for every ratio that you would need to put in if it went out. He says, and we only have 7, so it has to be the original. Kari alei. So who says this? Reb Zera says about Reb Yirmiyah, your beauty is successful. It rides on the words of truth, and your humility is right, is righteous. Yeah. I mean, you gave me a good answer. This is our third compliment on this page. What do you say? Yeah, this is not typical. Itmar Nami was taught also. Amar Bavo, Amar Yechanan.
Oh, you know what's amazing? You're not gonna believe it. When I was in college, I drove a cab with 2 roommates, and we'd always wake up late in the morning. So we'd get the worst. This was the old checker cabs. The worst cab you could possibly get in the place was number 88. So we always tried to beat each other, because the last one of us that got old 88. So this is 88. That's how I'm going to remember, because compliments 88. No
Okay.
compliments to that one. Sorry, just had to blurt that out.
Amala, where's Yitzi? They take out his words Amrulad. It's supposed to be Amra Baba, Amra Chanina, Amra Rebbe. Ner Shekavsa Nidashna Shemen Nidashna Psila. If the candle goes out, you have to redo the oil, you have to redo the wick, you have to clean it out and start over. Ketzadaisa, how do you do this? Well, Metiva V'Naisin Bashemen Kamidu Rishayna Madlika. They put in the new oil according to the new according to the original measurement, and you light it. Amazing, exactly what Rabbi Yirmiyah told Reb Zera. Amar Rav Huna Breder Rav Yehuda. Amar Rav Sheshas. Says Ner Shebemikdash Shel Prakim Hava. Okay, now here I need the way that the English commentaries say it. Usually Ner Shebemikdash Shel Prakim. Usually Prakim means that it's made from different pieces that's put together. However, there's the Menorah Shel Prakim.
No, Shabbos. The story of
I don't know about
the
that.
fish story.
Yeah, but I don't know that it was called prakim. Is that what it's called?
That's what.
The Rashi over here says it doesn't mean that it was mamish made out of different pieces. It means that it was made of a type of metal that you can bend it, you can move it around. Is that how they're translating it also? Yeah. My only concern is the whole thing was hammered for one piece. Sadly, is if there were separate pieces for the candle holders. You know, like you have like you put in a glass. This was like a little bowl that was put in to hold oil. That doesn't mean that the flexible. So they call it flexible. Okay.
With the extra oil, so they refill the original measurement. When they're going to clean out, they're going to have extra oil.
Extra oil that goes to waste. It's not clean out. Yeah. They wouldn't reuse. They wouldn't use that oil. Okay, okay, yeah, you got to follow this all the way through because this is it's going to prove that it's going to go back and forth machlekes in here about how exactly the menorah was. They're talking about cleaning it out because he holds kiksiv when it says in the pasuk kikar umiksha when it says that it was made out of one kikar, a talent of gold, umiksha, it was made out of one piece. A menorah v'neiris. It was talking about the menorah, plus the neiris, not just the branches, but the neiris are the candle holders. That's the case. Given the Mimaya Tava, since you have to clean it out, ilav the prakimav, if it wasn't made of flexible material, they wouldn't be able to clean it out. Because in order to clean it out, they have to empty it, turn it over. I don't know why they don't have a sponge, but I would clean it out with a paper towel. You put it in and it soaks it up. But apparently, no, they want it to drip out. You can't turn over the whole menorah upside down. Meisvei, the Gemara has a question. It says, Ketzadaisa, how would they clean it out? Misalkan, Menichan ba'ayel. Misalkan means that they would remove the candles from the menorah. Yeah, so they hold that the candles aren't part of that one piece. The one piece was the base and the arms. Right? Menichan ba'ayel, mekanchan, b'svaig. They would clean it out with the sponge. B'neisav Hashem and a madlikan. You hear the problem? Here we said before that it was all one piece, including the container that held the oil. Here we're saying that it was separate, that you could actually remove it. It says Hudamaki Tana is following a different opinion. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Chamim say that they would not move it from its place. What does it mean that they wouldn't remove it from its place? Who say that would mean that if they wanted to move it, they could move it. It means it was removable. Elaima, rather say, that it was not able to be removed. Okay. That meant that according to that opinion, it was attached. There's one opinion that holds it's attached. There's another opinion that holds that it was removable. Man chachamim, when it says chachamim maimrim loy haya zazmim kaima, loy haysa zazmim kaima, that it was not able to be removed. You say that's Rebbe Lazar who the Tanya. That's Rebbe Lazar. Let's see if it says Rebbe Lazar bar Tzadiku. Rebbe Lazar bar Tzadik. So in a brayser, Rebbe Lazar bar Tzadik Aimer, kimin tas shel zav haysala al gaba kshmitiva doicha klapi pia. Okay. Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok says that over the candle there was also another layer of like a wick holder that they could put the piece of gold that they would put the wick through that. Now, when they would clean it, they would have to push it up, and when they would add oil, they would also have to move it. They would have to move it. I mean, it's just two different ways of moving it, but to me, it sounds like you move it the same way. You would push it towards its mouth and to open it up. What would that mean? How do they translate it over there in the commentaries? And when they would clean it, what would they do with the plate? Towards the head. What does that mean? Towards the head.
They use towards the mouth and then towards.
What's the difference towards the mouth? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Towards the mouth.
Maybe the mouth is like the lid, like the cup that holds the oil. Yeah, I got it on maybe to the lid.
I don't know. I'm not getting it. Okay, there's a plate of gold on top of the where the oil is. It's like a wick holder. You put the wick through it, the wick would stay there. Now it says that when they would clean it, they would push it towards its mouth, and when they would add oil, they would push it towards its head. I'm just asking, what's the mouth and what's the head? So here it says towards the narrow edge from where the wick protrudes from the lamp.
Which it wasn't perfectly circular.
Oh, that's what it is.
Had a little,
okay.
like Aladdin's lamp kind of into it, and then that's the mouth. And then they move it back one more.
Good.
Well, if you had been here for the last 45 minutes, you probably would have beat me to the answer. But I love you.
So they pushed it towards its mouth, meant towards over the, they pushed towards the mouth means over the wick, so that they could clean out everything that's in the inside. And then when they would add oil, they would pour the oil over the opening of the wick where the wick was, and that would drip in. I don't know, that makes sense.
The flexible one doesn't seem very practical. It'll break.
Yeah, that's what we were saying. Apparently they had the
removable cups were much easier.
Yeah, but apparently they had the metal back then that didn't break. For us it would break. They knew how to do stuff. Right?
Right, Dr. Son?
This is a miraculous menorah we're dealing with. So,
because it's a bit flexible, and it's kind of like that. So it's like small pieces that are connected. This was made out of one piece.
That's how they know how to do it today. Doesn't mean that's
Things were different back in the day, right?
no, they.
know. You missed the
YouTube.
You missed the
Watch on YouTube.
I had my students in yeshiva. I told them when I was young, we didn't have electricity. We had to watch television in the dark. So they commented back, "You had a television?" Like that's the only thing they got from that. They didn't follow like the whole. So you had a television, okay?
So funny.
Okay. Look to the Hani Tanai. So this is a machlekes. This is a machlekes Tanaim de Tanya. So in the Brisa, menorah v'neriseh bayis min hakikar. The menorah and the candles, they all come from the same kikar, the same talent. Vein malkachem achtasem min hakikar, but the tweezers and the shovels, the little things that we use to clean out the menorah, the instruments, the utensils, were not from the same talent. The menorah with the candles, yes. Nehemiah says, menorah is min hakikar. But the candles, means the candle holder, the instruments were not from the kikar. See, you have machlekes if it was attached or not attached. But my commitment, what's machlekes? The haikra machlekes regarding this pasuk. The Tanya was taught in the Brisa. Kikar zav tayasais was made from a pure talent of gold. Lamadnu lemenorah sheba min hakikar. See, the menorah comes from a talent. That's a measurement. How do you know that the candle holder also was from the talent? All of these vessels. Also the tweezer and the shovel. You make it. Not the utensils. Okay? Now here Reb Nechemia says that the malkacheh machdeseh don't come from the kikar, but the neiris do. Before we had a brayse where Nehemiah says the loy neiris said that the neiris don't. It's a contradiction in Reb Nehemiah. Kasha Reb Nehemiah and Reb Nehemiah. Reb Nehemiah is contradicting himself. The Gemara says, "Don't worry about that." There's two students of Reb Nehemiah. They heard different things from him, and that's why it looks like a contradiction.
All the time with Rabbi Akiva.
Yeah.
The students.
Rabbi Shua ben Karcha says, "Menorah ba min hakikar ring malkachem the seven neiros ba min hakikar." He says clearly that the instruments and the neiros do not come from the kikar. Elamanim mekayim es kol hakelim eila. So how do I translate the pasuk that says all these utensils? The kelim shel zav. That it means that the utensils need to be made out of gold. Really? The Gemara says zav b'hediksiv by. It says clearly, "Vasisas neriseh shiva velas neriseh veheir alev panam malkachem machdaseh zav tar." It says clearly that the utensils were made out of pure gold. Talking about the edge where the fire is burning. It could have entered your mind to say that since the place where the wick is sitting, in that Aladdin's lamp, so that part would get very dark. And the Torah is concerned about Jewish money. The Abidzov Koldu, you can use any type of gold, not pure gold. The Abidzov Koldu, Kamash Malan, that no, you use pure gold for there as well. Okay. What do they call the purest gold today?
24.
24.
And most stones are 18, 14. These things, 10
but it's a scam. They market 12, they market 14 and it's never 14. So
even they market it as gold and inside a gold filled or gold plated.
no, that's
You got to really
that's
read this.
that's even worse.
Uh-huh.
It's usually not what it's.
They have to look at the stamp to be able to tell what it is.
No,
you go to a jeweler, he
know.
looks through a thing.
No,
you can see right away.
a lot of times people like that, they'll get on the drill. Put like a tiny drill, and then that's how they know it's like gold all the way through. Because if not, they could just like gold dip in.
Uh-huh.
You know a guy who used to go to flea market, to tell you, because people would sell jewelry that they thought was nothing, and he had this little thing, and what they would do, like if he thought something was gold, they kind of would have a chemical, or I don't know exactly, they rubbed it, and a certain color came off, or this or that.
And the
They knew it was
test.
14 or 8, like a scratch test kind of.
That only tests the outer layer. Inside it could
that's
be
it.
anything.
Yeah, who's the guy?
No,
The
not
guy.
me. I don't think he's alive anymore.
That can be.
But he knew how to buy stuff. He
Yeah.
knew how to buy stuff.
That can
He knew how to sell stuff too.
Chatzi lug, I guess it works together.
Smart business.
Chatzi lug shemen l'taida. We said that the half a lug is was used for the oil for the taida. Now the taida had a lot of loaves. So we got to figure out how this was divided. Tanya Rabbi Kiva Aimer. Started on Rashi. Rabbi Kiva says, "Ma Talmud Laimar." What's the meaning when the pasuk says "Bashemen Bashemen Shnei Pamim"? It says oil twice. Let me just see what that pasuk is. And it says oil twice. Bashemen Bashemen Shnei Pamim. It's talking about Vayikra Zayin Yud Beis. Leviticus 7:12.
Yeah.
Last time they got it wrong, but let's see. Yeah, so it says Imal Taidia Kvindik also with the Chalas Masas Bulu Bashemen or Kikamas Mshucha Bashemen. So it's Mervechas Chalas Bululis Bashemen. So it says 3 times. Why are they only quoting twice? Interesting. I guess the first one it needed it. So maybe it's talking about only the extra ones. Chalas Masas Bulu Bashemen, Kikamas Mshucha Bashemen. Shemen Kama Itzchach. Yeah, Rashi in the manuscript says that the first one is not extra, so that it had to say once that you used oil. Why do you have to repeat the oil by each of the types of loaves? So Bashem Shem Shnei Pamim. Ilu Lainemar Ela Bashemen Echad Is Yomer. If it would only say Bashemen once, then I would say Harehu Kachala Menachos Lelug. I would have said that you use a lug. Every mincha for the isaron, you have an isaron of flour, you use a lug. I would have said the same thing by the taida. Achshav shekasa bashemen bashemen. Now that it says bashemen bashemen, it says shemen twice. Haviriba achariba vein riba achariba lamayit. It's coming to reduce the amount of oil. What does it reduce? The miyatakasav lachatzi lug. It reduces it to half a lug. Mar says, Riba Charibai, Chad Ribai. What do you mean a Riba Charibai? It's only one extra one. because the first one was necessary. Now this is a little strange because the first one is already extra. I guess it means from these two. Look, it's still not telling me clearly. You have the question? Let me see if Taisvis is asking this. It says Shemin 3 times. Rabbi Kiva is saying it says Shemin twice. We said, why doesn't he say 3 times? We said, well, the first one was necessary. He's talking about 2 extra. Now, in this Gemara, it starts to say that if it only would have said it once, then I would have said that I needed it. But now that it says an extra time, so it's an extra one. So what do you mean? It said it 3 times. We already took care of the needing it for the first one. Right? That's coming up later. Just 1 second. So in this part of the Gemara, okay. So it says, if it would only say Bashem, I'll tell you what it says. If it only would say Shemen, if it wouldn't say Shemen at all, then I would say that it was just like a regular mincha, and you would use a lug. Now that it says Shemen, Bashemen, so it's Riba Riba, it's coming to make it one, to make it less, right? If they include, after you include it, it's actually diminishing. Now the Gemara says maybe this one chatzilug that you have should be divided equally into thirds. So you divide a half into thirds, right? Which would mean that you're dividing it into 6, the whole thing into 6. It's a half. And so you would have a 1/6 of a lug, because you had 3 types of matzahs here. Chalis matzahs, rikikin, and you also had revucha. Since it says an extra one by the revucha, which is the last one, so I have an extra oil for the revucha. So what do I do now? Maybe you take a half a lug and you divide it. Now you have 2 quarters, right? Half of it, 2 of the quarters, go to chalis and rikikin, which means each one gets a quarter. Chalis and rikikin. And the chetzav, no, that would be a whole half. It's a quarter of the half. Each one gets a quarter of the half, which is an 1/8. So they're giving an 1/8 to the chalis, an 1/8 to the rikikin, and then they give a quarter to the revucha. And that leaves us with a half a lug in total. Wasn't divided equally. Okay. So the out of these 3 types, the revucha, the one that was boiled, got more oil than the other ones, had double the amount. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah says, Akiva, my friend Akiva, if you, the entire day, if you're going to tell me that it says Bashemen and it says again Bashemen and it says again Bashemen, I'm not listening to you. The chatzi lug shemen that goes for the carbon taida, Reviya shemen lenazir, the quarter of the lug that goes for the nazir. The acharas yayim should be nida lenida, in the 11 days that are between one nida and another nida, which is called ziva days. Halach l'meish misinai, all of those are halach l'meish misinai. It's not coming from a textual source. This is just a tradition that we have from Moshe. Who? No.
He weighs a lot. He's very heavy. He will go on a scale and like outweigh everybody.
No, there was Elisha ben Avuya.
Oh. Right?
Sorry?
Heavy.
Rabbi
Go on a
Elazar ben,
scale and you outweigh everybody.
no, that was Rabbi Elazar ben Arach and Rabbi Elazar ben Horkenes. This Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he wasn't part of that. He was the one that was old. Rabbi Elazar, we had an Agada. It's, I'm like 70 years old.
Oh, that's right. Whippersnapper.
Yeah. Okay. Next, the Gemara says, "Balug hayamayid." They would measure with the lug. What are we talking about here? It says a regular mincha was measured with a lug. A typical mincha. Every Yisaren was measured with a lug. Balug hayamayid. Tan Rabbanan. Started in rice. Metzayra ani ksiv. Yisaren balul the lug. And there was one Yisaren of flour. So the Metzayra ani would replace one of the sacrifices with a meal offering. Instead of having an animal offering, they had a meal offering. It was replaced with this mincha. And the mincha was flour with oil. Now, how much oil was there? It says that the oil was a lug. Limit al Yisaren Shatan lug. This teaches us that when you have a typical mincha, we have an Yisaren, you have 1/10 of an ephah, which is 43 eggs. You have a lug of oil with it. Divri Chacham. That's what the Chacham say. Rabbi Nechemia, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Eliezer, who is it? Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Aimrim. They say, "Afilu mincha shel shishim esreinim ein la luga." No, not every Isarin requires a lug, but even an entire mincha that has many Isarin will only have a lug. Shnema lemincha v'lug shemen. That's their source. They quoted that in the Mishnah, right? That an entire mincha just has a lug shemen. Rab Nechemia, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Yisarin balul v'lug ma'avdilei. What do they do with the pasuk that the Chachamim brought that say that an Yisarin is mixed with a lug? It says ahu legufei. That's necessary to tell me that the Metzayra requires that. The Kamar Rachmana, because the Eibishter says leisichad Yisarin, to bring one Yisarin. Okay. V'idach. So this is talking about the Metzayra that's an ani, that's poor, that needs to get it purified. So they bring just one Isaran with the lug. That was the Chiddush itself. What does the Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Nechemia say to that? If the source of Lemincha Velug, Isaran Balul Velug, my Avdilay. No, we're only dealing with the first pasuk. We're only dealing with the Chachamim's pasuk. Isaran Balul Velug, that every Isaran requires a lug. So the Reb Nechemia says that that's referring to just that the Metzayra requires an Isaran. What does the Chachamim say it back? L'gufei leitzarech. I don't need a pasuk for that. Midagal Rachman Agab Metzayra Gimel Karbanis Gimel Esrainas. Since the Torah already tells me that a Metzayra requires 3 karbanis. Let me see what that vav is. Metzayra Asher. A wealthy Metzayra requires 3 karbanis and 3 Isaran. So hachad the chad carbon, chad isarin. So over here, that the one carbon, every carbon would be 1 isarin. So I already have that it's 1 isarin. So what's the pasuk telling me? Isarin bal of a lug is that every isarin requires a lug of oil. V'idach. So what would Rabbi Nechemia and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov say? Itzchach. No, I still need isarin bal of a lug to teach me that it's only an isarin. Because al kadait chamina hel v'chas rachman alasi bedalos emalei libai mina klal emalei libai mincha klal. Could have thought maybe that the Torah is concerned about this poor Metzayra. Maybe it would say that it doesn't have to bring any mincha. It has to tell me that it brings an isaron. Vidach, what did the Rabbanan say? L'gamri le'yashkechan. We never find that you get away scot free. That you always have to do something. Okay, v'Rabbanan. Okay, now the Gemara says, Rabbanan hayla mincha v'lug shemen mayav delay. What do they do with the pasuk of Rabbi Nechemia? Mayav, okay. Ahula misnadav mincha. That's talking about that anyone that donates a mincha shliifches midavar time log. You always have to bring an isarin. In other words, not that you bring one lug for however big your mincha is, but no matter what, whenever you pledge a mincha, what's going to be the minimal amount that you're going to bring? If someone says, I'm going to bring a mincha, like if someone gets an aliyah by the Sefer Torah and he says, I'm going to give a pledge, it's $18, right? It's not going to be $5 or $1. It's always 18, right? The 18 or a multiple of 18, if you specify or if you have a set amount. But so by the mincha, it was always an isaron. It's coming to tell me that a typical mincha it would be an isaron. You can never bring less than that. My niu, how much is that isaron? So what does Rabbi Nehemiah say to that? Beidach.
This sounds like the sliding scale. Is it always in one?
What do you mean 1 or 3?
This
Isaron.
They say like whether 4 1 takes 1 and takes 3. Like someone that is in between, would they take 2?
No, 1 second. 1 second. Beidach and Nehemiah, what do they say? Tarti shamat mina. That's from that pasuk. I can learn 2 things. Okay, I can learn 2 things from that. Okay, let's see. You're asking. Let's get these karbanas straight. The usher brings 3 animals and brings 3 israinis together with those animals. But here, the Metzera Ani only brings one animal. So they brings 1 isarin together with that animal. 3 animals or one animal. Yeah.
But that's like extreme, or wealthy, but if somebody that is in between.
There are other karbanas where you have 3 options. By the Metzora, it didn't give you 3 options; it gives you the 2 options. In the world. What do they do with the other karbanas if there's 3 karbanas and then it drops down to 1? Other one are brought with birds. By the Metzora. Yeah, but that no. There's 3 karbanas that are brought. If he's wealthy, he brings the 3 karbanas. But those 3 karbanas, he brings 3 yisarim, right? If he's poor, then he brings 1 of the animals, plus birds, plus yisarim. It's not a sliding scale. It's not 3 options. He gets the 3 karbanas with an animal, birds, and so it gets cheaper for him. But it's not okay. Now it says Shisha Lapar, 6 lug were for a par, for a bull, as that came along as the libations. Arbol ayel, 4 for a ram, and shleish lekevis, and 3 for a lamb. Minalan, how do we know this? The ksiv, it says in the pasuk, v'neskeim chatzin yilapar. It says that the libations, a half a hin is for a par, half a hin is 6 lug. Hin trace a luganabi. A hin itself is 12. So the ksiv shem and zayis hin. It says, anointing oil, this should be for me for all generations. Now, the word zeh that says this, the word zeh is a gematria of Tresavi, right? 7 plus 5 is 12. So we know that it's going to be 12. That's an interesting way of 12 what? I guess we know 12 lug. So a chatzin will be 6. Shleisho mechza lemenaira chatzi lug l'chol ner. It says 3.5 were for the menorah, half a lug for every candle because there are 7 candles. So that would be 3.5 halves. Right? Right. 7 halves would be 3.5. So 7 whole would be 7 whole halves would equal 3.5 halves. 3.5 holes. What we're doing is every candle had a half a lug. So there were 7 candles. So 7 times a half. How do we know? It says in the Brisa, from evening to morning, you should put in its measurement. It says it should burn from evening to morning. Another pshat. The only avodah that was kosher the entire evening was the menorah. What about burning the fats? Okay, I don't know. And how much is it? It was a half a lug that would burn from night till morning. Or it is night and Safra is morning.
From Marita.
Yeah, it's happened right time. And one of the songs is Mitafra Ramsha. And one of the Shams, the Zmiris.
Oh, she yes.
Ikad Amri, there are two opinions here. How did they figure it out? How did they figure out how much oil was needed? One opinion was Melmaila Matashiru. They started on with a lot of oil, and then they saw it in the morning it was still burning. They said, okay, we can diminish, we can go down. Ikadami, the other way of doing this was Mimata Lamaila Shiru, that they did it from, they started with a little bit of oil, they saw it didn't last, so they added more oil. Mandam and Mimata Lamaila, that says they started with a little Shiru, that's how they did it. So we're not going to waste. So you start with a little, and if you need more, you'll add more. One that says they started with a lot and then they went down. You don't show poverty in a place of wealth. So there's two approaches here.
I think
Two approaches to life.
The first one has its support from Malu.
Interesting.
Guy is Rabbi Smith was life lesson, and you guys stepped on his line.
Now that you
What was he
spoke,
saying,
he
Noah?
lost his trend of
No,
thought.
he didn't. He was about to say something, and you jumped on him. Like back to TV.
You try to be too excited.
Hillel's saying that if it would go out in middle, you have to add the full amount when you replaced it. You would have to go back in and relight it. Relight it, you would replace it with the original amount, not the ratio. So it turns out that the cheap end up paying more. So you try to be cheap, you end up charging more. Right?
That's
that
a
what
good
you're saying?
life lesson.
Yeah.
Another one came in.
I guess you would have to be a watchman also. Sit there all night looking at them.
No, it's just a kayan. It's a kayan. Okay. Ma'arvin niski parim and niski. This is a very interesting mission that says that the nisachim, which are the libations, it was flour and oil. It says niski parim and niski elim. The niski parim could be mixed together with the niski elim. The nesachim of the bull could be mixed with those of the ram. Both of them were 2 lug per isarin. Now, even though par had shleisha isrenim lapar, shnei isrenim la'ayel, right? Even though the par had much more, but the ratio of flour to oil was the same. Shleisha isrenim lapar, shnei isrenim la'ayel, bisar nechel lakebes. Now let's go to the to how much oil was. There was a chatzia in lapar, shlishis in la'ayel, revius in lakebes. So when you think about it like this, 3 saran was 6 lug. That means 2 lug per saran. When I had 2 isaran, I had 4 lug, which is again 2 lug per isaran. Then when I have 1 isaran, I have Revi'asahin, I have 3 lug, which means that now I have extra oil. Yeah, so 3 lug per isarin. So very good.
That's from the Mishnah
Yeah.
quoted. That was the chart.
Yeah, beautiful. Let me put it up over here for information.
No, it's Mishnah. It's
Yeah, I gotta go over that.
that.
Okay, what that's showing us is that the mixture, the ratio, the proportion of parim and elim are the same. But however, kvasim, when it comes to the lamb, those are a more loose mixture, and so that would not be mixed together with the other ones. Okay. Niske kvasim. Shal niske kvasim. Shal yachid b'shal tzibur, that was allowed to mix. You can mix it together because it was the same. So yoim b'shal emesh, if it was today's with yesterday's sacrifice, that was also allowed. Remember, we said you don't have to bring it on exactly the same day. But you cannot allow to mix together the nesachim of kvasim together with parim ve'elim. But let's say you did. And if you did mix it, elu b'fneatzim ve'elu b'fneatzim. I'm sorry. In balalan elu b'fneatzim ve'elu b'fneatzim. If they were mixed together and then they're mixed in each one, they were mixed, and then they were mixed together. It says it's still kosher. Okay, we weren't supposed to do that, but it's still kosher. Imad shaloi bolal pasal. Take a look at what that means. The lamb that came with the aimer, that was, even though it had more flour, but it did not have any more oil. It had a simple, the oil was the same like a regular lamb. Now, 1 second. What was the meaning of that? Imach leibal al pasal. The Gemara is going to explain this. If they weren't mixed originally, if they weren't mixed, in other words, if they were first mixed originally and then afterwards they got all mixed together, we said that it was kosher. But if they weren't mixed originally and they just mixed together initially, all together, the whole thing together, then that would be possible. Okay. Let's take a look at the Gemara. The Gemara has a question. We said that things were allowed to get mixed together. It says v'hiktiru, and you will offer it up. It would make it smoke. Shelo ya'arev chalavim b'chalavim. That you're not supposed to mix the one fat with another fat, which would mean that you can't also mix the nesachim with the other nesachim. So, and here we're saying that you could mix them because they had the same ratio. There would be no problem. Rabbi Yochanan imnis arvu. It doesn't mean that you were allowed to. It means after the fact. Imnis arvu kamer, saying after the fact. After the fact, if once it got mixed, it was okay, but not lechatchila. Ihachi. 1 second. That's what you're going to say. And if you go further, it says ve'ein ma'arvin nischei kvasim v'nischei parim ve'elim. It says you should not mix the nischei, the libations of the lamb together with the bull and the ram. So that would mean afil nisarbi namiloi. That means even if we're talking about after the fact, it was kosher. Then when you tell me you're not allowed to, that would tell me after the fact you're not allowed to, right? That would tell me after the fact it's possible, right? If we're dealing with lechatchila, then we're not dealing with after the fact. We're dealing with just lechatchila. You're allowed to mix it together. But Rabbi Yochanan is not saying that. Rabbi Yochanan is saying that when it says that you're allowed to mix it, it doesn't mean you're really allowed to. It means that if you did it already, it's okay. That would mean that when it says you're not allowed to do it, that means if you did it already, it's not okay. So the problem is, but midiktani seifa, It says that if it was mixed, then it's kosher. So michlal the reisha lechatchila kamar. Obviously, that when we're talking about in the beginning of the Mishnah, we're not talking about b'diavad, we're talking about lechatchila. Because how the Mishnah later on says the b'diavad and it says that it's kosher. The kasha. And it's there's a contradiction here, and Rabbi Yechanan's teretz doesn't seem to work. Amar Abaya. Abaya answers, Achi Kamar, Ma'arvin Yayin, Ma'arvin Yenan. Originally, you're allowed to mix the wines together, the different wines. Now, im nis'arev sultan v'shamnan v'yenan. I'm sorry, im nis'arev sultan v'shamnan. So what we're learning is like this. Really, the oil and the flour should not be mixed together. The oil and the flour should not be mixed together. As we learned, what it says by the chalavim, by the fats, they're supposed to be offered independently. If they were mixed together, it's kosher. Now, but it does say that they were allowed to mix it together. So when were they allowed to mix it together? That's if the wine was already mixed together, then they allow you to mix the flour and the oil together. No, the opposite. If the flour and the oil was already mixed together, then they allow you to mix the wines together.
B'diavad.
Huh? What do you mean?
What do they mean by mixing them?
I have wine.
And Rashi,
No.
they mix it together.
No. I have wine. They're bringing different animals as sacrifices. I'm bringing a bull. I'm bringing a ram. I'm bringing a lamb. So each one has a certain amount of wines. And you mix them together when you're offering up. So just pour it down together. And the thing. So the question, what we're saying is that if the flour and the oil was mixed already, when it shouldn't have been, two sacrifices, but the evidence was mixed. Then we said lachatchila, you're allowed to mix the oil, the wine.
That's cool because that's the first time we have a lechatchila based on the b'diavad.
Right. Once this happened, then you can mix the other one. So now the Mishnah gets highly complex because when we said over here that ma'arvin nischei parim v'nischei elim, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the flour and the oil? Or are we talking about the wine? So according to Abaya, we're talking about the wine. That's why the flour and oil we're not supposed to be mixed. We're mixed together, right? That's the pshat. That's what Abaya is saying. It comes out that the pshat in the brisa that gets quoted, it says the burning. That means you don't mix you're not supposed to mix them together. That's talking about the flour and the oil. The wine, you were allowed to. Now the Gemara asks, the yenim lechatchila loy, but the wine lechatchila you weren't supposed to. You're only allowed to mix it together, the wine. If the flour and the oil was already mixed, then we allow you to continue and mix the wine as well. But Tanya boy, I have a brisa that says, when do we say that you're not supposed to mix it together? That's with the flour and the oil. Aval yayin ma'arvin, but the wine lechatchila you're allowed to mix anytime. Right? We said before you're only allowed to mix it once the flour and the oil was mixed. But here we're saying that you can mix it whenever you want. Amar Abai Achi Kamar. What it means to say is the sultan lechatchila. It means that once the flour and oil was mixed, then you're allowed to mix the wine lechatchila. However, but if it wasn't burnt yet, if it was burnt already, then you can mix the wine to lechatchila. The lo yukter, but if it wasn't burnt yet, then im nesar of sultan v'shamnan, once the oil and the flour was mixed, ma'arvin nami yenan v'imlav ein ma'arvin. If not, then don't mix it. Dilma asi laru v'selis v'shem lechatchila. It's interesting. The concern over here is that once I mix the wine, I may end up mixing the flour and the oil as well. So once the flour and the oil was already burnt, then I'm not worried about mixing the flour and the oil because it's not here. It's already been burnt. It's already been offered. So the wine I'm allowed to mix. But if the flour and the oil is still present, so then and it's separated, two sacrifices are separated, then don't mix the wine because if you mix the wine, you may end up mixing the flour. But if the flour and the oil is mixed already, then you're allowed to mix the wine.
Right. The things that's burnt is the kmitza.
That's on a regular mincha. But this is the minchas nesachim, which is entirely burnt. Keves haba naimer.
No leftovers for the
It says like this: the lamb that came together with the aimer, that lamb, instead of having one isarin, had two isarin. Minchasa taner rabbanos taner nebraisa. Minchasa shnei yisranim. Mincha has two isarin. This is talking about the aimer, second day of Pesach. Besides for the aimer, which was barley, but it also had where was that siddur? I was not going to have it in here because it doesn't have Yom Tov. Yeah, pass me that blue siddur.
See.
Interesting that we don't have any mention of this. Interesting. There's no mention of the Aimer in davening. In the Musaf. Have on the 15th, Mishas Yom HaChag, bring Harim, Bnei Bakar, Shnayim, Ayalecha, Shiva Klasim, places in La Pars, Nesurim Layel, Kolamayid, Pesach. Don't mention the Aimer. The Aimer doesn't get put into the davening. So strange. What do I have on Shavuos? I have on Shavuos, I have the Shtei Alechem, right? Yom HaBikurim, Mincha Chadash B'Shavuos Seichem, Harim Bnei Bakar, Shnayim, Shiva Klasim Bnei Shana.
It's its own thing. It's separate from Pesach and from Shavuos. It's the intermediary korban.
Right.
It's its own entity.
But it's brought on the second day of Pesach.
Yeah,
I don't mention it.
That's when we
should have a little thing for the second day of Pesach and the Aimer.
But that's one esrei specifically for Pesach, not for the Omer.
Checkmate.
I'm
Checkmate
just
means
saying.
checkmate.
I
means you're
understand the
done.
question, but
Okay.
that's
Checkmate
my
means-
answer.
Checkmate means you're done.
Inshallah. Okay.
Okay. Maybe, I'm sorry? What do they mention about it?
Check. Move.
That doesn't help me with this. It's interesting, but it doesn't help me with this question. What Hillel is showing me is that the what we learned is that we said niske. We were talking about originally we thought we were talking about the flour and the oil, and that's what we were discussing. Why not to mix it together? Then we said that no, we're talking about the wine, and so the term nesach could be used for oil or for wine. Wine was actually poured on the mizbeach. The oil was not poured on the mizbeach; it was mixed into the flour. But because it was poured into the flour, you could use the Hebrew word nesach for the oil as well. That's what he's quoting from the Art Scroll, Rabbi Scroll. Okay. It says the mincha is two isarin. Limin al kevas abala emayim minchasi kfula. that tells us that the mincha, that means the nesachim that came along with the Eimer, was double. I could have thought that maybe just like the mincha is double, so too is the wine double. Talmud Laima beniska yayin revius a hin. It's a regular yayin for a ram, which is a revius a quarter of a hin, which is quarter of a hin is 3 log. I could thought maybe that the wine wasn't doubled. Okay, the wine comes along independently. But the oil should be doubled because that's mixed in. You should have the right ratio in the ingredients. So Talmud Laima, the pasuk says v'niskai, and its libation. Kol nesachav la'yuel revius. V'niskai. That means that whatever's poured over here is only going to be a revius. My Talmuda, how do we see that? Amar Rabbi Lazar says ksiv v'niska, v'karinu v'niskai. It says in the text v'niska, and we read it v'niskai. Ketzad, how is that done? How does this play out? It says niska de mincha keniska de yayin. The pouring of the mincha is like the pouring of the wine. My yayin revius, af shemen nami revius. Just like the wine is niska means it's. Niska means it's feminine, referring to the mincha. Niska is the mincha, but niskai is referring to the lamb. Niskai is the lamb. So the wine that comes with the lamb was a revius, but because it says it's written as niska with a hey. So it's telling me that it's going to be the same as the oil. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan says, "Asham mitzayir sheshachta shlei lishmai ta'an nesachim." Let's say an asham, the guilt offering of the mitzayra, that was shechted, but it wasn't shechted for the sake of an asham. It was shechted for some other sacrifice. Well, if that's the case, Rabbi Yechanan says, Ta'an nesachim, you have to bring the nesachim as if it's an asham. Shemiati Aimer came, because if you're not going to say that, then pasaltai, then it's going to be pasul, because it really can't be anything else other than an asham. So even though it's interesting, even though he's not yaitze his asham, he's a mitzayra, he's not yaitze, but he has to bring it as if he is yaitze, because otherwise the whole we say that an asham that's brought shalei l'shma is kosher, but here we're adding in that you have to, it's so kosher that you also have to bring the nesachim together with it, even though it's not going to function for him, it's not going to work. Otherwise, well, what else is it supposed to be? An oila? Can't be an oila. So let's take a look. Maskefler Rabbi Menashe Bargada. Menashe Bargada asks, the lamb that was brought together with the Aimer. If it was shachted shlei l'shmai, and just so the flour that's brought should be doubled, because shemiat Aimer can't pasaltai, because then if it's not, it's going to be pasul. Just like the Mitzayra, if you didn't bring what else did he want it to bring? So you have to bring 2 isarin instead. And then he goes on. He says, you would have to bring 2 pieces of wood. If you're not going to say it, pasaltai, then it's going to be possible. In other words, he's saying that if Rabbi Yechanan holds that you have to bring the carbon as if it is the way it was consecrated for, and which means that you have to bring everything that goes along with it, because if you're going to switch it to something else, it won't be valid. Then we should do that for all the other sacrifices as well. So the Gemara says, "Enachanami." Okay, fine, no problem. We'll do that for the other sacrifices as well. Oh. the Shittim is adjusted. It says, if you're going to tell me that no, there's no problem, you have to add in those words. Then, I guess it means why didn't he mention that? Elam Abaya says the reason why he didn't mention it because he took one out of all the many cases. Rababa says Bishlai Mahanach Eilis Nino. When it comes to other sacrifices, those were regular oilas. Like for example, the tamid was an oila, or the sacrifice that came together with the oimer was an oila. Ilay chazal oilas chayva, so karbal oilas nadava. So you had an intention for something else. Don't worry about it. So it's not an obligatory oila. It's a regular donation oila. Okay, so you don't have to bring everything along with it. Elahacha, but over here by the asham. Ilay mukmas le b'milsef. You're not going to say that it's going to be an asham mitzayra. Asham nedava miyika. Is there a concept of a donation asham, a donation guilt offering? There's no such thing. So it has to be asham mitzayra. Asham mitzayra has to come together with the things that comes along with it. Tani kavasei Rabbi Yechanan. We have a brayso that supports Rabbi Yechanan. Asham mitzayra sheshachta shlei l'shmai. If I have a asham mitzayra that was shechted for the wrong intention, then oishalei nasan midame al gabi bahina. So you didn't do it properly. Harezu ayla. It's considered an harezu ayla legabi mizbeach. Not that it's considered an ayla. It goes on the altar. Not that it's an ayla. But v'tanasachim, you have to bring the libations as if it's an asham. V'tzarech asham achal atirei, and you need another asham to satisfy this person's obligation because he didn't bring it right. Okay, let's leave it over here. Can we do 2 blocks? No, different. Okay. What's today's page? 91?
91.
Okay.
So,
2 blocks behind. I don't know.
Still having a doctor.
You're doing good.
Okay, have a good day. Have a good week, everyone. I mentioned that the daf tomorrow will be 7:30 unless I change it.
Yeah.
If I change it, then